The reason that Neem works great topically is because it works at the skin microbiome level. The reason it works great internally is because it works at the gut microbiome level. So it's all about microbiome and what goes on there. Your skin is not sterile. I'm sure you know that. It's an ecosystem. And when the ecosystem gets out of balance, acne shows up, fungal issues appear or reappear, odor shows up, and inflammation shows up. Any kind of skin inflammation that you can imagine tends to be worsened when the microbiome is disrupted in a negative way. Neem helps to reduce the overgrowth of these negative organisms. It helps to calm inflammation, and it helps to actually support the barrier and help to repair the skin barrier that protects your skin. Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Some of the most powerful herbs in natural health aren't the popular ones like ashwagandha, echinacea, elderberry, dandelion root. They're the ones nobody's talking about, and a lot of people have never even heard of. Today, we're going to change that, at least for one of them. Today, we're talking about the herb Neem, also often known as neem oil, because that's probably the most common way to use it, but it can be used internally, it can be used externally, and it comes in a variety of different things, different ways to use it: creams, ointments, oil, gel, soap, and capsules that you take internally. So there's a lot of options with this. And it's not just another antimicrobial herb. It's actually pretty unique. And I really feel like you need to know more about it. In fact, as I was researching this to make sure I had all the details straight, I learned a lot myself, actually. A very, very cool herb is neem. I'm going to call it a terrain shifter. And if you understand what that means, it changes how you approach skin issues, gut issues, candida, and even detoxification. What neem oil actually does is not quite like I said, most other antibacterials. It doesn't really kill bacteria, kill yeast, kill parasites. That's the model for so many other herbs like oregano oil and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we need killers. However, shifting the terrain is a different story, and it's much more gentle. And although neem is very powerful, it's powerful in different ways, because what it does is it actually changes the environment that these organisms live in, the pathogenic organisms. And when you change the environment, you don't have to kill everything. You just make it hard for the wrong things to survive. You're just making the neighborhood a little less hospitable, very much like spore probiotics do, but in a very different way. And neem and spores are a match made in heaven. I'll get into that in a minute. There are some compounds in neem that you don't need to memorize the names. In fact, they're a little tough to say, some of them. Nimbidin azadirachtin, and one most of us have heard of, quercetin. Now, again, you don't need to memorize those. What you need to know is what they do. They disrupt microbes without nuking everything. Research has shown that neem has activity against candida species. There are multiple studies starting in about 2016 that prove that, certain pathogenic bacteria, and even biofilm-forming organisms. But here's the difference. It's not a carpet bomb for your microbiome like antibiotics would be. It applies pressure, and that pressure slows reproduction, weakens structure, reduces dominance of these pathogenic things. And it breaks biofilms. And that's huge, because microbes don't just float around in your body. They build protective shields to keep you from killing them off. Biofilms are a beast, as you may know, if you've read much about this, seen much about it, or you've dealt with it yourself. And I've talked about biofilms, especially recently on the biocidin episode that I did. But the interesting thing about it is that biocidin is a great tool for this. And if you listen to those shows, and I'll link to them in the show description because they kind of goes hand in hand with this. I love biocidin. But biocidin is also very expensive. One thing that's kind of cool about neem oil is it sneaks in at a much lower price, and in many cases can be every bit as effective at disrupting biofilm formation and breaking down existing biofilms. And there's multiple clinical studies on that going all the way back to 2011. So you're not just attacking microbes, you're actually exposing them. Think of it like tearing down the bunker so that you can see the enemy, so that your immune system can actually see what's in there and then go after it. So you're really creating a situation where your immune system is more capable of knocking out the bad stuff because the biofilms are gone and now they're exposed and now we can get after them. Another thing that's really cool about neem that makes it pretty unique is that it's actually a pretty powerful anti-inflammatory, not the way that most anti-inflammatories work, though. It works within the immune system to help balance inflammation by reducing something known as NFKB. It also reduces cytokine signaling. So instead of kill and then inflammation spike and symptoms get worse, you get rebalance and inflammation calms and symptoms improve. It modulates the immune system, which makes it great for people who have hypersensitive immunity, autoimmune issues, things like that. It's not a stimulator of the immune system. Neem helps your immune system recognize threats better, respond more efficiently to those threats, and avoid overreacting to those threats. This is why it's useful in chronic skin issues, particularly chronic autoimmune skin issues, gut imbalances, and recurring problems that just seem to recycle on you on a regular basis. So, what is the big idea here? It really is this terrain shifting. The simplest way to understand neem is that most herbs attack the invader, and neem changes the environment. If weeds are growing in your yard, you can keep pulling weeds forever, or you can fix the soil. Neem is more about fixing the soil. So, topical use is the most common way that neem is used. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, lots of stuff, soap and ointments and creams and lotions and all kinds of things are available. The reason that neem works great topically is because it works at the skin microbiome level. The reason it works great internally is because it works at the gut microbiome level. So it's all about microbiome and what goes on there. Your skin is not sterile. I'm sure you know that. It's an ecosystem. And when the ecosystem gets out of balance, acne shows up, fungal issues appear or reappear, odor shows up, and inflammation shows up. Any kind of skin inflammation that you can imagine tends to be worsened when the microbiome is disrupted in a negative way. Neem helps to reduce the overgrowth of these negative organisms. It helps to calm inflammation and it helps to actually support the barrier and help to repair the skin barrier that protects your skin. So, what are the best forms? There's a brand that I really, really like. And one of the reasons I like this brand, well, there's two reasons. One is they're just a neem company. That's what they do, which I think is really, really cool. The company's called TheraNeem, has another kind of parent brand name that doesn't matter, but it's actually owned by my friends over at Solaray, the Better Being company. And TheraNeem is a cool brand because it is a dialed in, focused, this is what we do line of products. And one of the products that I think is the most universal and makes a lot of sense for a lot of people is the maximum strength neem soap. Think of it as kind of a daily reset. If you've got acne prone skin, breakouts. In fact, I'm planning on, I've never used neem soap before, actually. Planning on bringing a bar home myself because when I shave my head, I often get little bumps and stuff like that. I'm going to see what it does for that. So I'll be testing it out myself. Awesome for any kind of excessive body odor, this soap is, and any kind of general microbial balance. It's kind of a baseline tool you can use every day if you want, if you need it for certain things like that. There's also a cream, and this is more restorative, but also hydrating. So great for any of the dry, irritated, inflamed conditions, eczema type symptoms. Daily use for barrier support and really helping with that skin microbiome. There's also a neem combined with aloe gel. This is great for itching type stuff, excess sun exposure, any kind of irritated skin. And frankly, I think the gel or the cream, depending on if you're looking for more moisturizing or more soothing, you may have to experiment with both, but very fast relief with this stuff. And then neem ointment is going to be the most heavy duty besides just the pure neem oil. And people use it for fungal patches, stubborn issues on the skin, cracked skin, things like that. Very targeted. People might also use the ointment for nail fungus and things like that, but you can also use the oil for that. The oil is the most potent way to do it, though. Just pure oil in a dropper form. It's by far the strongest topical tool, but you can kind of, it can be a little harsh, can be a little strong. So I always recommend that you dilute it properly, probably about a 1 to 10 dilution, about 10% neem oil to some kind of carrier oil. Coconut oil makes sense. Olive oil makes sense. You can use grapeseed oil, jojoba oil, anything along those lines. Jojoba oil would mirror the skin's natural oils the most closely. Olive oil you probably already have in your pantry and also has some nice mild antimicrobial benefits. So you can do that. And a liquid coconut oil makes sense as well. So 1 to 10 dilution for most people, 1 to 20 dilution makes a lot of sense for someone who has very sensitive skin. Test it out slowly. And I do recommend, especially if you have sensitive skin, to spot treat, right? Just do a little bit on your hand somewhere, or maybe a little bit more of a sensitive skin, thinner skin area. You can put it on and just see what that does before you go bigger with it. Where to use it? Nail fungus is one of the primary uses, and I love neem oil combined with tea tree oil in something like coconut oil or jojoba oil or something like that. Or tea tree, which is much more gentle than neem, can actually be used along with neem oil on like a 1 to 10 ratio. If you want to just use pure oils, you can test that out. Excellent for athlete's foot. Awesome for anything along those lines. Any kind of small, kind of stubborn skin patch where you're experiencing irritation. And it also can be great for the scalp, particularly people that are dealing with like dandruff type issues, dry, scratchy scalp, those types of issues. You can use neem oil in your shampoo or conditioner, and you just kind of experiment with how much is effective for flaky scalp, itchy scalp, dandruff, those types of things. And neem does have a pretty strong smell to it, but you can add a little bit of a better scent, a lemon oil, lavender oil, if you like lavender, or tea tree or something like that. Although some people don't love, I like the smell of tea tree, but not everybody does. So you can scent it with another essential oil if you'd like as well. I don't think it's like super harsh, but it does have a strong smell to it. It doesn't linger though, in my experience anyway, not for very long. So really, really great for the scalp microbiome, the skin microbiome, on the feet, any of those areas. Absolutely love it. Now, an underrated use, but one of the best uses is in dental use. Some people use a little bit of neem oil and add it to their mouthwash. Some people put a drop on their toothbrush and then put toothpaste on top of it. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. You can gargle with it. Again, cut it with something, but you can gargle with it in a mouthwash or something like that. This is going to help to reduce oral bacteria, support gum health, and disrupt plaque biofilms in the mouth without nuking the mouth. I really, really like neem as a dental use thing. And I don't think I've ever talked about it on Vitality Radio before. I don't know why. Anyway, after only doing it for 19 years, you'd think I'd have talked about everything, but it is a never ending well of information out there. Now, so that's where the external use stuff is. I'm sure there's 100 other applications I didn't mention, but that gives you a pretty good idea of some of the ways that you can use it. What does it do internally? Well, you can take neem in a capsule form. The one that we carry here at Vitality is by Solaray. We may even bring in a couple of additional ones before this show airs, but they'll all be linked in the show description. But we love the Solaray brand, great quality, 460 milligrams per capsule of pure neem leaf. And it does the same thing. It reduces fungal overgrowth. Specifically, there's excellent research on it for candida. It helps to apply pressure to pathogenic bacteria, breaking down gut biofilms and lowering gut-driven inflammation. And this often actually, when used internally, shows up externally in skin improvement. Why? Because the skin is often a mirror to what's going on in the gut and or the liver. And so neem internally, in fact, if you've got a chronic thing externally that you want to use the neem for, let's take fungal infections of the toes, for instance, toenail fungus. That's not a toenail problem. That is almost always a gut problem that is presenting as a toenail problem. At least that's been my experience. So taking neem internally as well as using the oil externally makes a lot of sense. Now, let's talk about candida. Candida is something I think most people are familiar with that listen to shows like this, but it's a yeast where we are eating too much sugar in many cases. The microbiome is imbalanced. So you've got an overgrowth of candida. Biofilms are present protecting it, and the immune system is often dysregulated. Neem addresses all four of those things because it has direct antifungal pressure, has direct biofilm disruption, reduces fungal adhesion, and calms inflammation. It doesn't just kill yeast. It actually makes the environment unfriendly to it, as I said at the beginning. So the strategy is really, when you're taking it internally, clear the pathogens, rebuild the gut so that we have a really, really great, not just solution to the problem in the short term, but then rebuilding the system to where we're not going to have a recurrence of the problem in the long term. So let's just say that you're going after candida. Now, this could also be used for various other things, SIBO and things like that as well. But let's say candida, and I'll give you a specific protocol that can make a lot of sense. The neem oil or the neem capsules from Solaray, and then adding in a systemic enzyme like I love Candex, Candex from Pure Essence Labs for this. What happens is basically candida has a tough outer cell wall. It's tough to kill, tough to break down. Candex includes two enzymes that go in and break down the cell wall itself. That weakens the structure of the yeast, making it much easier for Neem to then do its job. So they're a really good tag team there. Think of it as Candex softening the target and Neem finishing the job. Take the Candex on an empty stomach every time, at least an hour before your meal or 2 hours after your meal. Just on its own is best. And then take Neem with meals just because it's a little easier on the stomach if you take it with meals. Although some functional medicine doctors will recommend taking it on an empty stomach. And you can experiment with empty stomach. Most people aren't going to have a problem with empty stomach with Neem, and it can be a little more effective that way. So you can determine based on your gut and your sensitivity level whether you want to take it on a full stomach or an empty stomach, but it works well both ways. You can add other things that are anti-candida like berberine, caprylic acid, oregano, things like that. But Neem on its own with systemic enzymes can be extremely effective. Now, what about die-off? We hear about die-off when we're fighting off something like candida, SIBO, parasites, things like that. And binders can be a really great solution. You can decide how you want to do this. Do you want to add a binder right out of the gate? Do you want to test Neem and Candex or just Neem on its own initially and see how sensitive you are to it and if it's bothering you at all? What is die-off? It's basically when microbes break down, they release toxins. This creates symptoms. Sometimes it can be headaches, it can be fatigue, sluggishness, and things like that. If you're experiencing those things when you start with Neem, throw in biotoxin binder from Cellcore. That's fantastic. You can do more simple binders if you want, like charcoal in capsule form can be very effective there, and it's certainly less expensive than the biotoxin binder. Humic acid, fulvic acid, there's a few different ways you can go, and we'll have those things, linked as options in the show. But a lot of people aren't going to experience die-off, especially if they start small with like 460 milligrams once a day for a few days, then twice a day for a few days, then 3 times a day for a few days, working your way up if you really are going after something in a targeted and powerful way to about 4 to 6 capsules per day, depending on what is comfortable for you, but is also giving you results. And then in that process, you're also simultaneously building the gut by adding spore probiotics, vital spores. My favorite, of course, it's my formula. I developed it. I love it, but Neem isn't going to kill this stuff. So you can take it at the same time. You can be rebuilding and strengthening the gut biome with the probiotic at the same time as you're knocking out the pathogens with the Neem or the Neem and the Candex, depending on if you're, what you're going after. And Neem can be used for SIBO. It can be used for Candida. It can be used for a whole bunch of different gut disrupting organisms, and it does have mild antiparasitic benefits as well. So don't think of it as a parasite cleanse, but you can think of it as parasite maintenance, which I really, really like. And you can do it for a month here and a month there throughout the year, just as kind of a let's tamp this stuff down, better safe than sorry type of a thing. All right, so that's how you would use it internally. Who should think about Neem internally? Anybody with chronic skin issues should look at topical as well as internal and really experiment with both. As I mentioned, candida, SIBO, bloating and gut imbalances that you're not sure why they're happening, recurring fungal problems outside of candida, anything in those categories makes a ton of sense. If it has to do with a biofilm, then it makes a ton of sense. What to expect when you're using Neem? If it's working, your skin starts to improve. Digestion can improve. Less bloating, less sugar cravings, less inflammation in the gut, and less inflammation on the skin. And if you go too fast, you can expect possibly a little bit of die-off, fatigue, brain fog, temporary flare-ups, that kind of thing. That's where you either add in a binder or you reduce your dose or both. So in closing, Neem is one of those herbs that changes how you think about antimicrobial things, because again, it's not a carpet bomb for the gut. It's not a carpet bomb for the skin. It's not what your dermatologist is going to recommend. It's not what your doc is going to recommend. It's some powerful antibiotic. Okay. It's fixing the environment so the right things thrive and the wrong things do not. If you think about, I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, if you think about your lawn, if you've got a lawn out there and you've got, weeds, or your garden or whatever it is, think of the weeds as the pathogens and Neem as the product that fixes the soil so that those pathogenic things, those weeds, are not growing like they used to. This is about getting the body restored and balanced so that it can do what it was designed to do in the first place. This series I'm calling Herbal Secrets. I'll be doing more of them on herbs that you probably either haven't heard of or have heard of but don't know much about. There'll be shorter episodes. Really just let's learn about how to use this herb and how to use it right and why I might want to use it. I hope you enjoyed this first episode on Neem. If you have questions, call us 801-292-6662. Visit one of our stores, Bountiful or South Ogden if you're local. And if not, jump on our website, vitalitynutrition.com. There will be links to all the things that I talked about in the show description. Thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.